You are listening to episode 142 of the Brain Software Podcast, almost live from Toronto, Canada, and spreading the hypnotic storm worldwide. I'm Chris Thompson, and today, Mike Mandel and I continue with part 2 of personal development lessons that can radically transform your life, so stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a profound honor to be selected to be your keynote speaker this evening. Thank you. Just keep throwing money. Now, in all seriousness, I've chosen as my topic an issue that is near and dear to all our hearts. In this blank generation, can we ever truly disseminate the sort of damnable arm-scratching well-being that our forefathers envisioned? Did Magna Carta die in vain? Can we relegate all the standard light fixtures to the rubbish heap, or are we simply underlining everything in sight? But all of this, of course, leads to a remarkably obvious question. Why is it you can always get enough caviar, but you can never get enough toast to go with it? And even more vitally important, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know?
These are days of victory! I'm Chris Thompson, the CEO and the 2IC, which makes no sense, of Mike Mandel Hypnosis, and I greet you with a resonant Vooty!
Vooty and Bavarch!
Bavarch, that's the spirit. So, dear friends, in the name of our founder, Dave Shizjig, I want to welcome to the center of the Hypnotic Slaughterhouse 5, a man who is fully recovered from a recent bout of influenza, a 164-pound man of tireless wisdom and energy far beyond his advanced age, Mike Mandel.
Yes, Chris, and what a Bavarch Vooty sort of day this is. We are back, man. This is our first listen to your insane laugh. This is our first actual recording of a podcast in 2020, man.
Yeah, I heard somebody describe it as the year of hindsight.
It's awesome, man. I get it.
Oh, that's
Excellent,
totally
buddy.
awesome. All right, so Vooty, we've got another new strange word. My first time reading this now as we're recording, and I'm just wondering, what the heck were you thinking? I love this. I love this podcast. We're going on like 7 years.
Cannabis, man.
What does that even mean? It's we're going on 7 years of doing this awesome show. All right, let's go. Let's start with the
Quick promotions.
Yeah, no, before we even go there, let's mention that this episode 142 is a continuation of where we started in 139.
Right.
We actually kind of screwed up because we said 139 is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series on personal development lessons inspired by my own ideas. And then in 140, we changed the topic. So 142, we're getting back to it. We're going to finish the part 2. This is going to be fun because I know so many people emailed us about 139 and said it was an amazing episode. So if you missed that, maybe start there first. But it is great content, and I think you will enjoy it. So with that said, that's what we're going to talk about. Before we get there, quick promotion. Our live training, I have recently opened up the training for everything that we're doing in Toronto for the year 2020.
At our brand new location, too.
Right.
And I want to say for the record, we are not at Charbonnel Lounge. We are not at St. Michael's College. We are not at the University of Toronto, and we have zero connection with them. I want all of you to know we are not at the University of Toronto.
Okay, so we are going to be at a new location. It's on Queen Street, right downtown in the heart of Toronto. It's amazing, across from City Hall. It's a phenomenal classroom. Anyway, go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events, and I'll tell you quickly what's coming up. So in April, we have a 5-day architecture of hypnosis starring Mike and I, and we also have Bob Burns coming in from Scotland to do a weekend training. That lines up nicely, so you can do both. In May, we've got a 5-day architecture of, in June, we've got a 5-day architecture of hypnosis training. You're welcome, Vivian. We changed it for you. And then in October, we've got another 5-day architecture of hypnosis and a Saturday, Sunday, Monday of David Snyder immediately following the architecture class that
Wow.
we're teaching. So that's what's going on. Everything is available to be signed up for now, and these things do tend to fill up in advance. So go check it out. If you have questions, you can email us, support@MikeMandelHypnosis.com. We'll get you the quickest answer. And now, onto the show.
That's great, man. I'm looking forward to it. We've had some sign-ups already, haven't
Oh,
we? for
absolutely,
AOH at our
yes.
new location.
As
This
soon
is
as the
gonna be
new year
amazing.
started, I knew everything's slow over the holidays.
Yeah.
And, the doubt starts creeping in. What? Do people hate us all of a sudden?
Yeah.
No. As soon as the new year hit, boom, just everyone starts going, well, it's 2020.
Yeah.
I guess I should sign up for classes now.
So sign up and come and train with us, but not at the University of Toronto.
Yeah,
Chugna
that's
Lounge.
right. The only thing that's still to come, we will be putting up a page for our HypnoThoughts live pre- and post-conference classes in August. So maybe a quick heads up on that. We're doing a Mindscaping one day prior to
Graphology
HypnoThoughts.
one day after.
And we're doing Graphology after. That's right. But we don't have a link for that
No,
yet.
we will. But let's talk about,
Right.
I got the think tank words generated, Christopher.
Okay,
And
so
our words, this is a random noun generator online. I didn't
Love
use
it.
the think tank again. And the words are lecture, tumor, and kinship. What
Oh,
on
man.
earth do you make from this? What do you get from this?
Well, lecture resonates with me because, I have an Audible subscription. So I
Yeah.
get audiobooks. I get one, the deal is you get 1 credit a month for $15. And I often use my credits for things that I want to learn. And recently I've been buying whatever's looking interesting. Sometimes they have sales. So I'll buy extra with cash. Like it'll be a $5 book. And
Yeah.
it's a great course, audio course from the Great Courses, which we've talked about many times on this podcast.
We have.
And so I'm currently going through one on, it's a series of lectures. It's like 24 lectures in audio format, so you don't get the visual, but that's fine. I listen while vacuuming and stuff. And I'm going through one on conflict management right now, conflict resolution, really enjoying it, learning lots of new things. So lecture to me reminds me all about the importance of learning from those who are awesome teachers. And the Great
nice.
Courses has great teachers. You want me to move on to the next?
Well, no, let's stay with lecture for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, a lecture can sound kind of dry.
It can,
the word,
yeah.
right? So to me, that word is it's almost like a warning to ensure that what we're doing is not dry.
Doesn't sound like a lecture.
Right, more
a
of a-
boring lecture, like your kid going, yeah,
Excuse me.
Are you giving
More that
me
we're
another
bringing
lecture,
humor
Dad?
into the situation.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
and content.
speaking of which, and my word for 2020 is
Yeah.
fun, right? In fact,
yeah.
this is the first
It's not
podcast.
working, buddy.
This is the first podcast where we can talk about our words for the year. So maybe we'll get
I
to
can't
that
believe
a
you're
little
actually
later.
looking at me
Yes,
as you're
I
saying
know.
all this.
Yes, I
instead
know.
of looking at the microphone.
You're making bum noises.
I know. I
and-
was
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Okay, now what about tumor? Tumor obviously is a growth. Now, you know what I think
Yeah.
of right away is Esdale with this 80-pound testicular tumors that he removed with hypnosis. So to me, tumor and hypnosis, you put that together, in his case, mesmerism, and it's basically saying no matter how big the problem is, the right tools, you can excise it
Yes, exactly.
and move on from there.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, we're talking about James Esdale, and he wrote a
Mesmerism
book.
in India.
Yeah, you can actually Google the book and get the PDF, I think, on Google.
You can buy a reprint of it from India that's really nice.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful, wonderful, interesting book. I thought you were totally exaggerating when you used to talk in class about James Esdale cutting out 80-pound testicular tumors. And then I found out you were not at all. In fact, there were heavier ones than that.
Yeah, 150.
It's in the book.
Yeah,
so,
and you can see the picture of the
yeah,
tumor.
It's
not
in the book.
No.
Yeah,
No.
online. Anyway, very interesting. And, 1800s in India, James Esdale.
In Calcutta
Really cool.
specifically. Yeah, Scottish doctor.
Now, tumor to me, I was thinking about something that is growing that shouldn't. And so in your life, you can think about
Hatred.
What is it that you're letting become a tumor with respect to your time?
Wow.
Where are you wasting too much time? Because you can't get it back. You can't just cut that sucker out
No.
and, I get my time back. No, it's gone, right? The same
Right.
thing for money. What is becoming a money sink? What can you cut out? What can you starve the flow of blood and oxygen to? Actually, I guess technically tumors don't need a lot of oxygen. But anyway, we're not getting into biochemistry here.
Right.
But you get the idea, right? What can you starve so that you're not leaking assets, money,
Which
time,
could just be
things
time.
like
Yeah,
that?
it could be as simple as time. That's interesting. Yeah, what things in our life become drains of energy and vitality and all of that stuff. And I noticed right at the top, you did say a 164-pound man. I had ballooned up to 170.7 over Christmas. I'm 163.8 as of yesterday. So I want to hit the 150s, buddy.
Yep,
I want to get that damn tumor of fat out of there. I don't have much left.
You will get there. Yeah.
What about kinship?
Yeah, so, I mean, it just makes me think of connection to people that matter to you.
Okay. See, I see the word ship in it, too. Mm-hmm. And I think of that wonderful film, Brazil, with Robert De Niro as Tuttle, the unlicensed
I've never seen
heating
that.
You got to see it.
Okay.
He's an unlicensed heating engineer, and De Niro does nothing wrong as far as acting goes, I'm convinced. And his line was always, "We're all in this together, kid."
Nice.
Kinship.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat, buddy. We're in the same ship.
That's a
and
good one.
I think we need to make the voyage as easy as possible for all of us. When one person benefits, we all frickin' benefit. It really does work that way.
Awesome. Okay, so that was fun.
Let's go to some of your lessons, Christopher.
All right, so this is a continuation of 139, podcast 139. I made a bunch of notes on personal development lessons.
You said personal.
Personal development
we'll
lessons.
Personal
development lessons that just seemed to hit me as important, inspired by various people in my life. Could be parents, could be you, Mike, could be anybody.
Anybody.
Could be just original thoughts from me. So, okay, first bullet point we've got here is, I wrote down, realize that people will mind read. Now,
you mean Six of Clubs?
We'll come back to what that means in a moment. So realize that people will constantly mind read. Any NLP person out there listening is going to go, oh yeah, you're not supposed to mind read. I'm mind reading that you're going to say that. People will mind read. And every blank that you leave is going to be filled in by unknowns, naturally, right? So the deletions will get filled in, and people will make assumptions.
Okay, so can you clarify that? I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
The blanks that you leave, they're going to fill in from their own experience and their own ideas of what you mean.
Yes. So if you just tell somebody, let's say you say, I don't like that restaurant, and then you leave the conversation. You're not opening with enough information to help the person understand that, well, you just don't like Indian food, let's say.
Right.
Or which makes you crazy, of course.
Yeah, of course. But
if I say that the place was dirty, or that it was overpriced,
there's not enough info,
or that the person you were going to meet there just didn't show up, and it created a negative association in your mind. The blank that you leave will be filled in by unknowns, and that person might leave the conversation and go, "Oh yeah, Chris said that this restaurant totally sucks."
Yeah, it's interesting because we do mind read. You're raising a very interesting point. And also the way we word things, because we are only skimming surface structure of language, we're not into Chomsky's deep structure here. When I say something like, suppose I say, lobster tastes terrible. I have told you absolutely nothing about lobster. I've only told you about my preferences.
Yeah, it tastes terrible.
I've told you something about me.
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that you're talking about you. Tastes terrible to who?
Get that piece of fluff off your neck. It's driving me nuts. He's got a this really new natty sweater that looks really good on him, but he's got little bits of just fluff and stuff on it.
Fluff. Well,
okay, so yeah, that's a very good point. People are going to mind read. Every blank we leave, someone's going to fill in with their own understanding, their own information. So how do we get around it?
The challenge becomes, think about your communication, and I'm a 9 on the Enneagram model, right? So natural, I want to build rapport with people. So I'm constantly doing my best to put myself in their shoes and think, what are they getting out of this? Am I being clear enough? Now, as you know, Mike, that can lead to Ken Sweatman stories. Because I'm overly cautious about making sure I provide sufficient detail so that sometimes I provide completely irrelevant detail.
It becomes an explication, which is an overly
So you don't want to do that, but I think you do want to get in the habit of thinking about what you're saying from the perspective of the listener. Do they have enough information to actually understand what you mean? Okay? And if you do that, your communication will get better.
Well, also the whole thing about mind reading. I'm putting this deck of cards out of the way. It's annoying me because it was open. I could hear it rattling as I was closing.
You're making noise. I know. Making more noise.
Here's what's annoying. We had a friend, Laura Turner, years ago. The woman has since passed away. Nice lady. Died in her, I guess, late 70s, early 80s. And when Heather and I were getting our first Bengal cat, she heard about it, and she knew they were quite a large cat. And she phoned us up, and she said, you don't want to be carrying one of those big cats around.
Around where?
In the house even, right? And I said, well, actually, Laura, that's exactly what we want to be doing. One form of mind reading that drives me nuts is when we tell other people what they want or what they think.
Yeah.
You think...
Wouldn't they know?
Yeah. you don't have to tell me what I think, because if I'm thinking it, I already know
There's two possibilities that you've explained to me. Either they're wrong, in which case there's no point in them talking, or they're right and you know that, and there's no point in them talking.
In either case,
So there you go. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Schedule time to improve.
Yeah, when I was making this list, it occurred to me that, of course, we all care about improving, right? And if we have a tumor of a time sink in our life that
just got me out of nowhere. If we have
a tumor of, just going back to the words, right? So the words from the podcast that we're focusing on. So time is finite. We all have exactly the same amount of time in our, well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. We all have 24 hours in a day, and we can choose to invest that however we like. If we let ourselves spend that time doing things that aren't making our lives better, then we're not moving forward. And time to improve, whatever that is, so whether it be learning new things, whether it be exercising, whether it be preparing awesome foods, spending time with people that you love and care about, you got to schedule it. It's not just going to fall into your lap.
This is it, isn't it? And you know, what's the old line? Fail to plan, plan to fail. Mm-hmm. And my wife here in the new year, you know, she's going through some health stuff. She's broken her wrist, and she just came out of flu, and she's got Meniere's. Frustration stuff. And she said she's had to realize that facing the new year, she has to prepare the usage of her time better than she has, because she said it's too easy to just get online and start Googling Meniere's disease or vertigo or any of these things she suffered from, and then suddenly realize 2 hours has passed and she's done nothing but stare at a screen.
You've done nothing to make your life better. That's right. Yeah, and I'll give you an example just as far as efficiency goes. So I mentioned a moment ago the great courses, and I'm currently going through the one on conflict management and conflict resolution.
How's that working out for you?
It's really good. I'm on lecture 5 right now, but because they're only half an hour a day, the theory is, hey, if you invest a half an hour every single day, you can finish essentially the equivalent of a university level course in a month.
Yeah.
In 24 days specifically, right? For most of them. So, well, how am I going to get that half an hour in without it taking extra time out of my day? Well, I realized if I just take my iPad, hit play on the lesson as I'm crawling out of bed and making the bed in the morning and getting dressed and brushing my teeth, that's 15 minutes right there. That's half the lecture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I drive my daughter to school, listen to a bit more to lecture as I'm driving to the gym, listen to the rest of it as I'm driving home, or maybe when I'm at the gym stretching, and I get that done. So I'm scheduling that time. Now, the reason that I brought this bullet point into the conversation is because around November or December of 2016, so just over 3 years ago as of this recording, I had been sitting at my computer realizing I'm doing my work, my work day is scheduled from 9 to, let's say, 2 o'clock, and I would typically plan to go and do a workout around 2 o'clock. But I would waste too much time, and then by 2 o'clock realize, oh man, I just have not gotten enough done, so I guess I'll skip my workout today. And then I would work an extra hour, pick up my daughter from school, no workout. Well, at that point I realized, you know what? Work, i.e. career stuff, this is not the biggest problem in my life. The biggest problem is I'm not in physical shape that I want to be in.
You're not?
I was not at the time in the shape that I wanted to be in.
You're not now.
And that's when I started doing the Gymnastics Bodies program.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that Tim Ferriss had Coach Christopher Summer on his podcast around that time.
Yeah.
And the guy runs the Gymnastic Bodies courses. Anyway,
what kind of shoes
bought
does he
those.
wear?
Fantastic. I love it. I still do it. And for over 3 years, Mike, I carved up my life differently, where I go to the gym in the morning and I don't start my work day until noon.
Now that's interesting. And I'm not a morning person at all. I've sort of been forced to become one because of my Egyptian Mao, who's woke me up when he was an infant at 6 a.m. every day and became a morning person. But I've learned, Chris, that if I do not do my workout, if I don't start before 10, certainly by 11 o'clock, a chance of me doing it's almost non-existent.
Yeah.
I won't do it.
You got to figure out what works best for you, right?
Yep.
And schedule that time, and then just design your life around it. The 80-20 principle means you can do 80% of the work that matters in about 20% of the time. So force yourself, and then that's Pareto's. Then we have Parkinson's rule, which is that tasks will tend to expand to fill the time allotted to them. So give yourself just enough time.
That's Parkinson's. What's the law of selective gravity?
I don't know.
It states that the chance of a buttered and jammed piece of toast falling jam side down is directly proportional to the cost of the carpet.
Oh, that I like that. Okay. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, buttered side down, jam side down.
Yeah.
Okay,
But it's interesting. You're saying about the scheduling time to improve. That's a really interesting point because.
So how are you scheduling time to improve?
Well, I don't need to improve, basically, Chris. I
had a feeling you were going to say
so many
that.
years just running at the very edge of who I am. What does that mean? But here's what's interesting. Focusing on things that are fun. Now, I got to hand it to you because when you and I do these podcasts, I only see you pretty well twice a week unless we're training. I see you Tuesdays when we do podcasts, come out to Hypno East. We have our big honkin' lunch, laugh like lunatics, and Candy, our waitress, knows what to serve us. It's just everything's done. And then the other time is if we're at jiu-jitsu class. And I always have fun.
Yeah.
But for you to say schedule or focus on things that are fun, you mean something
No,
beyond.
sorry, you're skipping down.
No,
to the
I'm not
next
skipping.
point.
I've moved to the next
Yeah, okay.
one.
You haven't. I thought you were still talking about schedule because I asked you when do you want to schedule.
No, I'm saying
when
how are
do
you
you schedule time?
I said I don't schedule anything.
Okay.
It's done. So I'm asking
So
how
we're
are
on the
you
next point.
scheduling in the fun?
Okay, so
it
this
does
is the
fit.
next point on
Yeah.
the list, which is focus on things that are fun.
Now that's you.
So yeah, that's a good point. How do I schedule things that are fun? Well, then, okay, so interpersonally, Monday nights and Thursday nights, my kids are off at dance, and so my wife and I have plenty of time to hang out together, which is great. Then on Monday night, later in the evening, and Tuesday night, I play volleyball. So that's like my favorite sport in the world, as you know.
Right.
And so that's a lot of fun. Wednesday, we do our jiu-jitsu. Tuesdays, like today, we get to hang out and do these podcasts, so that's fun. But I think there's more opportunity. That's why I made fun my word for the year. I think that spontaneously throughout the day, I need to look for more opportunities to laugh at just things that are not going right, let's say with the kids or whatever. Just laugh.
Well, so if you're helping, Tupelo and Rodrigo with their homework, do you bring fun into it? Do you help them with stuff like that too? Are you finding ways to inject this in your life? Because you're a fun guy. You're not a serious guy.
I don't think, other than team and events that involve, me and other people, like a team of volleyball players, for example, that's got to be scheduled. But the rest of it, I think there's got to be some spontaneity in it. In terms of answering that question, though, actually, my daughters don't really ask for a lot of help with their homework. They're excellent students.
I know,
they're
they're
very
smart
independent.
kids.
But
Smart kids.
when they do, I'll make it as fun as possible or tell stories and, just do my best. Okay. But anyway, this is not a fun point anymore.
No, it isn't, but it's kind of starting to suck.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
What about looking for ways to eliminate things you don't enjoy?
So that's probably
what we're doing right now.
The reason that I put that point on there is because I think you need to move towards the fun and away from the not fun, away from the boring. And, if you think about procrastination, do people tend to procrastinate on stuff that they love?
No, not at all.
Never.
Not at all.
So when you're catching yourself procrastinating on things, ask yourself if you can instead just eliminate that. Is there a way that you can just not do that crap? You don't like it? Can someone else do it?
Yeah, that's interesting. So
can you pay someone, bribe someone?
Farm it out. Yeah,
Can you hire /trade/ just don't do? Like, what'll happen if you don't do it? The thing that you're now you can't.
You can't predict it with 100% certainty.
If you want to be, for example, fit, you can't just outsource, someone else will do my workouts for me. Okay, obviously. There are things. But
there's an app for that.
Yeah, there you go. So there's obvious, let's not get crazy about this. But with respect to tasks, okay, you don't have to be the one to do things. Is there a way that you can get someone else to do it for you, make a trade, just think about it. Use your brain, open your mind, look for opportunities to just not do the stuff that you don't enjoy.
Now, this is interesting, Chris, because you've raised the point we've never discussed. Not in this way, anyway. Here in Canada, the Great White North, we get a lot of snow. Last year, I shoveled the snow 18 or 19 times. Now, realize we have a medium-sized house with one car, but a 5-car
you've got
driveway.
a
lot of snow to shovel, and I can't hire anyone to do it. Nobody will do it. You can't get anyone unless you do a season thing. The guy we
How
did
does
before,
that belief serve you?
Shut up. It's accurate. So anyway, the bottom line is, it used to bug me, and then what I did was I was unable to stop doing the shoveling because I have to do it. My wife had a fall on the ice this Christmas. But what I realized was, what if I reframed it so it was no longer a bad task? So now when I get out there and attack the snow, I actually enjoy it.
You put your AirPods in.
Yeah, well, no, I don't do that. You fall out of my ears. The left one falls out. But I put myself in a state where I realize this is a really good workout. And I'm intentionally gauging the speed I'm going to make it a challenge. And when I come in dripping with sweat and I've elevated my heart rate and lifted, so it's not a bad experience now. But before I was going through it like a freaking drudgery, entirely my perception.
Okay, so you can change. Yeah, you can do the change the perception, or like I will do is I'll dress appropriately for it, so I'm not getting cold and freezing hands and all that. I'll put my AirPods in, and I'll listen to a podcast or an audiobook or something that I will enjoy.
Yeah,
I will add enjoyment to the task. So that's always
good.
That's always a good
That's
thing
how I
to
vacuum.
do.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on to the next one. I think the next one is a really important one for you.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. Oh, what a nice open Zygarnik loop for everyone listening. All right, here it is. Take advice from people smarter and more experienced than you.
Hurrah!
This is so freaking simple and obvious, but not enough people do it. In my life, and the reason that I wrote this down, I have always thought, hey, you know what? If I can avoid making mistakes by learning from the people who already made them for me, I'll probably have a better life.
Yeah, that's nice.
Right? So, and that's just been simple things like watching how people destroy relationships by not communicating well with their spouse or something like that.
So you get someone who's really good at destroying them and you learn from them.
Well, I just watched this particular situation. It could have been a movie, could have been a real life situation, but you go, that's probably something to remember not to do. Yep. Okay, that'll make my life better. So take advice, and that's where it crafted into take advice from people smarter and more experienced than you. I mean, if somebody is building a business out there listening to this, and they can connect with someone who's done it before, made the mistakes, knows what to avoid.
Yeah, don't reinvent the freaking wheel.
If you're looking to get in shape and you go, oh, well, I should probably just, get on the treadmill and make sure that I eat fewer calories than I burn. It's not that simple. But if you go to an expert who's done this and coached people for years and years and years, you will get results.
That's very interesting. You should say that.
Find the right people.
It's got to be the right solution, one that actually works. Find the right people, the people who are the authorities. And this is where I salute you, Chris, which, as you can imagine, is very difficult for me to do. But you're the one who got me into Tim Ferriss's stuff.
Yeah.
John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. All these different, Peter Attia.
Yeah, Dr.
And
Peter
all
Attia,
these wonderful things where people have gone the route ahead of us. They've already blazed the trail, and we can learn on a huge scale from people like them and Dr. Jason Fung, who you just had supper with, interestingly.
Yeah.
But that's a horse of a different color, he says, switching metaphors. Now, what about, you said learning from other people's mistakes so you don't have to make them all yourself.
You know what? There you go. That was the next point. I already mentioned that, so we can pretty much skip it. But, find out what you can just not do in terms of screwing up because you've already watched other people do it. You don't need to learn from your own mistakes only.
Right. And to this I would add, get sufficient information that you're not making a superficial choice.
Yes.
Based on just your perception of what's going on. If an expert is giving you information, get enough detail that you know what's happening. A friend of mine, back in the 1980s, late 1980s, he was overweight. And I was attempting to get him to eat better and do some other things based on the little knowledge I had at the time. Well, instead, he said, I told him, you got to start exercising, move your body. He went out and he bought a pair of ankle weights.
Oh, nice.
1 pound ankle weights to walk to the subway. And I said, why did you do this? And he said, I thought it would be a good idea to build up my legs. I said, it's not your legs that are the problem. It's your 80-inch gut. You've got to apply what is the line, Chris? And with this, we'll move on. I continue to apply the correct solution, which did not work despite being the correct solution.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, man.
That's right.
The other thing I wanted to bring up here, Mike, is make sure that you understand the difference between an opinion and experience/knowledge. So your Uncle Bob, who says, oh, you should just make sure that you don't eat them avocados or whatever it is, don't learn from other people's so-called, air quotes here, mistakes when it's really just their uneducated, uninformed opinion.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Right? Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people out there who are well-meaning, and what we call it in the Wellness Academy is make sure that you're not mistaking Or no, how to deal with ignorant people and how to deal with undermining people.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there are people who are attempting to either undermine
We see that when people quit smoking.
You just get them out of your life.
Yeah.
Or they're just ignorant. They don't know. They are helpful. They mean to help, but they just don't know.
They just don't have the
Avoid
proper
those
info.
people, and that's where the bullet point people
At least avoid that information from them.
People smarter and more experienced, not people who are just more opinionated than you.
Good.
Right?
Or who can express it more cogently.
And I'm very
or
strongly
louder.
opinionated about
No,
this.
I said
okay?
a really good point there. I said, or just they can
Louder.
express it louder or more cogently.
What did you say there, Mike?
You must
Yeah,
be
no.
right. This next point is very interesting, Chris. And these, of course, this is your list. But I like you one. You've explained this to me that this is something I've intuitively done. But you said your father taught you this, and I think it's a good life lesson.
Yeah. Okay, so my dad, who is an engineer, and that's what inspired me to want to become an engineer originally, he taught me to think about problems using extremes. So, like, give me I don't know if we can come up with an example here. Maybe throw out a problem for me.
Inability.
How much
to
time should we spend?
think of problems?
Maybe how much time should we spend writing blog posts, Mike?
Okay. How much time,
Well,
Chris?
so if you think about that using extremes, you can either say we're going to spend 0 time writing blog,
Or
zero
my entire day.
just zero content
Yeah.
production. Well, we'll have no business really, right? Okay, so that would suck. And then what if we just did it, 24 hours a day, or essentially minus sleeping? What if all we ever did was write? Well, then we'd have no fun.
Right.
We'd interact with no people. Our lives would totally suck. So that helps you understand that the right answer is somewhere in that range, and you can start using the extremes to analyze it.
Yeah.
Now, if the extreme was, well, if I did this all the time, that would be amazing if it was a different question. Hopefully not writing blog posts, because I just don't
Right.
find that terribly exciting.
No, I don't think
But,
any of us do.
If you asked me, man, what if you were just playing volleyball all the time versus never? I'd be thinking a lot more along the all the time end of the spectrum, not the never end of the spectrum.
Right.
And I'd go, so immediately you get this intuitive feeling that, well, I'd like to do a lot of it. And this came up most recently, you and I, it was about 2 years ago, and we were talking about this in Heathrow Airport, just with respect to how much travel should we do. And I said, because we kept getting invites like, will you come to Iceland? Will you come to Dubai? Will you come to this?
Belgium,
We could literally be traveling and living out of a suitcase
All
in a
the
hotel
time.
room all the
Yeah.
freaking time. So we sat down over a glass of Chardonnay
I
and
think it was
said,
more than one.
and we said, all right, what if we were to just never travel? Well, that would kind of suck because we wouldn't be able to get out there and make new friends. We love going to conferences.
Yeah.
Well, what if the other end of that spectrum was true? What if we traveled and did like a class every single week in a new location? Sure, there would be a lot more money involved.
Yeah.
But our lives would fall
My
apart.
marriage
from
would no longer exist.
Yeah, we'd
Yeah.
have no marriage. We'd have no relationship with, in my case, my kids or my dog here. We would have no health and fitness because we'd be freaking exhausted.
Yeah.
It would totally suck. So that when we thought about that,
but thinking about this using extremes, it really enables us to sort of evaluate hassle versus reward.
yes, and you'll get an intuitive feeling of where in that spectrum of the extremes do you think the right answer is. All right, so
That's a good
that
point.
was just something. It is an important lesson. I learned it from my dad.
And that's a good one. I also, on the same note, I talk about reversals in my head. If something had to be reversed, how would it affect me? I'll give you an example. I'd be sitting at our street waiting to pull out onto Pharmacy Avenue, and there's more and more traffic all the time now. And I'd sit there, maybe I was going somewhere, coming to your place, and the traffic, and the traffic, and the traffic. And initially, I would think, oh, I'm never going to get out of this driveway.
Yeah.
So then, or out of the street. Then I
Yeah.
reverse it and say, suppose they were intentionally attempting to keep me in this street. How long would they be able to do it?
And you go, oh,
maybe
eventually
20,
I'll get
30
out.
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I said, yeah, there's a break.
I remember you told me that when we were pulling out of a parking lot once, and it was the same thing. It was so much traffic. I'm like, oh, bloody heck,
Yeah,
this is going to
bloody heck.
suck. And you said, well, imagine that they're trying to trap you.
Yeah.
Oh, sure enough, an opening comes, you're all good.
So the
Be
Heathrow,
patient.
putting a lid on the Heathrow thing, we came to the conclusion we will teach in Toronto, the Hypnotic World Epicenter.
And then we'll go to Vegas.
We can go to Las Vegas for
we'll go
Hypnothoughts
to London.
Live, and we go to London, England
Right.
for UK Hypnosis Convention. But that's it. That's
right.
it.
And that's why we basically say no to everything else. All right. This is another important one that came to me more recently. The idea is speak when you have an audience. So what that really means is if you're just blindly offering advice to people who aren't interested or aren't listening, if you're telling a story and people aren't listening, well, that kind of sucks, right? You're diluting your perceived power, your charisma, your influence. So if nobody's listening, just don't talk.
Chris, you know what? I think you should go on a cleanse.
Thanks, buddy.
Offering advice to people, right?
Yeah.
It's this morning. I was talking to Ryan on the phone on the way here, and I told him about my wife's Meniere's disease.
And he
said
telling
she needs
you
to go on a cleanse. I said, Ryan,
his solution
a
to
cleanse
everything
will not fix everything. The death rate is still 1 per person.
Yeah.
No matter if you're on a cleanse all the time. But God bless him. He said, I'm not talking about when you die. He said, I'm talking about quality of life and suffering. I
Yeah.
said, okay, that's a good point.
All right, we've got one more. Well, actually, before we go on, is there anything you can think of here? Because you have, obviously, you're a great example for people in terms of commanding presence. And so anybody, and do you, let me ask you this. Let me do this as a form of a mini interview.
Uh-oh.
Are you aware that when you're talking, are you aware of when you have control of the audience in terms of their attention?
Yep.
And when it's fading?
Yep.
And I've noticed, I've pointed out to you, you do things that, like one thing that I describe blading.
That you do now.
Yeah, well, I've modeled it from you because I noticed you do it very well. Blading is, it's hard to describe in auditory
You
format
put your hand in a karate chop
position.
position.
You put your hand in a bit of a karate chop
But you don't strike anyone.
position, and you use it like you're reaching out, like you're gesturing, pointing with the blade of your hand rather than your finger in the direction of the people that you're talking to. If you calibrate that the attention has fallen off of it.
Brings them right back.
It does bring them right back. You usually step in just a little bit, lean
Invade their
forward,
space a bit.
and you blade with your hand. We should do a video on that because that's cool.
And establish like strong eye contact and intention. Again, the intention brings them back because you know what'll happen. And God knows I'm guilty of this, but somebody will be talking, trying to make a point, and there's just too many opportunities for hilarious comedy. So I'm throwing in lines, just bogging it down, bagging it down.
So
bogging it down with hilarious lines. If somebody bladed, they could stop me.
What do you think would be a
You
great
just bladed.
strategy? I did, yeah. What do you think would be a great strategy for people? So if they notice that they're not getting the attention they want as they're talking, that they should either regain the attention,
regain the
or
attention.
Stop. Like what's the right exit strategy?
I never stop.
Okay.
I never stop. So I do the blading most of the time, reestablish their attention, and continue. I never get loud though. It's just done with intention. Don't get louder. I'm not. As I was saying, it's never anything like that. But the other one I'll do is if the blading hasn't worked, I will start to talk about completely inane things without changing my tone. So I've been trying to get someone's attention for, this vacation we're booking or whatever, or Hypnothoughts Live, and they're laughing and doing one-liners, and I'll say, and they took all those purple umbrellas and they put them all back in the drawer, and I think that's where the marbles must be to this day. And people sort of, and then they come back.
So you've used it as a pattern interrupt to then
just go into gibberish and stupidity. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so I think it's worth noticing in yourself when you have an audience, when you don't.
Yeah, make sure you have one.
Speak to people who want to be spoken to and given advice, and don't blindly offer advice.
People have wandered away.
That's my advice for you that you haven't asked for.
Now, you've got your final one here, and this is good timing. Your final one is a very interesting one.
Yeah,
You've got exaggerate to improve.
I wrote down exaggerate to improve. And this is, for example, this isn't for things like eating or weightlifting or anything like that. This is exaggerate to improve at things that you want to get good at. For example, a lot of actors and actresses are really good at doing foreign accents. And when I was a kid, I used to love doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, right? And stuff like that. And so
that's cultural appropriation. You can't do that now. You go to jail.
Yeah, apparently, right? If you exaggerate the accent, or in the case of, let's say, somebody who is foreign, who has come to Canada or United States and wants to reduce their accent, they want to sound more American or Canadian or whatever it is. I think the trick is to exaggerate it. So go to the point where you think you're being insanely silly in imitating that American accent, and you'll actually get better at it.
That's interesting, because Barry Farber, when I studied with him, the man who spoke 26 languages when I studied with him, he said the way to get an accent, he said, do that very thing, exaggerate it. He said nothing sounds worse than when we're talking with Canadian or American accents trying to speak French. We don't want to say something like my Aunt Marjorie. She said, well, I go to Spain and I've learned a bit of Spanish. I just say to them, dos arangues, par favor. She says Manchester accent, dos arangues, par favor.
I don't even know what the heck that means.
2 oranges, please.
She's
trying to say, dos arangues, por favor.
Por favor.
Yeah.
There you go.
So you got to get the accent nailed. Speak
so
with a good
the
accent.
same thing, this applies to me more current day in terms of shortening stories.
Really?
Yeah, I mentioned to you that I want to get more effective at saying more by saying less. So let's say you're doing a nested loop metaphor. You want to tie up three, and in hypnosis we teach this, right? 3 nested loops with the direct suggestion at the bottom, tie them all up. If you can deliver 3 nested loops, the entire thing in 60 seconds, that's pretty freaking efficient.
That's very
right?
fast, yeah.
So think about how short can I make this story without leaving out important details. And practice that. Exaggerate
thank
it.
you. This is distillation.
Right.
And this is a principle in language. And that's what poetry is. That's what makes poetry different from prose. Poetry is distilled. So when you write something as a poem, you cut out every unnecessary word. You want to distill it so it's concentrated. Yeah. Likewise, that will help our stories.
The poet of storytelling.
Ken Sweat in the story. So I've got some empowering questions here, buddy.
Okay, so that does take us to the end of the list.
Yes,
so
Ken.
let's go to the empowering questions. Okay.
Here we go. Ask yourself, what is the absolutely most important thing I need to get done in 2020? And what resources will I draw from to absolutely make it happen? Which things, when considered, lead me to focus in a new way on all that will make this new year awesome?
Awesome question. All right, do we have...
I got a Meta 5, buddy. I got one. It's called the most expensive windows in the world.
All right, so in a reminder, a Meta 5 is a metaphor, but
Only
better.
So Bob Gray, who I used to work with, another Brit, laughed our heads off all the time on the road for 6 years. He spoke backwards. He wrote backwards and upside down. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for speaking backwards phonetically perfectly. So you could ask him to say something like, "My name is Bob Gray. I'm from Woking." And he'd go, and we had a TAC reversing tape recorder. Reverse, it would come out, "My name is Bob Gray. I'm from Woking," like that, which is kind of cool. Well, we traveled for years, and we were doing hilarious practical jokes. And we passed a building, the Kinsman Building, on Highway 401, which is a really busy highway across southern Ontario. And every time we'd pass it with these enormous black windows you could see from the road, I'd look at it. And one day I said to him, "Do you know that building has the most expensive windows in the world?" Now, expecting him to go, "Say serious," knowing that I'm dicking around, but he didn't. He said, "Really? Why?" I said, "You know photo gray sunglasses?" He said, "Yeah, I've got a pair of those." I said, "Those work on the same principle, but they're incredibly expensive. It's a certain sort of quartz glass. So the brighter the sun, the more the window shifts to permit sunlight to come in. They positioned this building so it needs no heating and no air conditioning, and it is always 68 degrees, which amazingly is the same temperature that you find in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Cheops." And he went, "Wow, that's amazing." And I'm just laughing to myself. I forget about it. Totally on the top of my head. Off the top of my head. So I forget about this. And about a year later, we're driving by with our manager, Perry, at the time. And Paul says, "Perry," he said, "you see that building there?" I said, "You know, it's the most expensive windows in the world." Perry just tells him to F off. He said, "It is not." He said, "It is. Isn't it, Mike?" I went, "No." He went, "Shut up. Do serious." I said, "Serious. I made it up." He said, "You bastard. Have you any idea how many people I've told that to?"
Oh my goodness, I love that story. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. This has been episode 142 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel. And I'm Chris Thompson. And reminder, head on over to our website. You can get the Brain Software ebook there. But more importantly, make sure you check out the events page, mikemandelhypnosis.com/events. And come to Toronto, check out the live trainings that we've got and the guest trainers that we've got. Bob Burns, David Snyder, and of course, the Fritz and Jeff Show. Mike and Chris, here we go.
Well, Chris, I'd like to offer a little something to our group.
Uh-oh.
From Russia with love, I fly to you. Pick up the tempo a bit. Much wiser than... I can't do this. Well, the lawn tree bloomed for me, buddy. I don't have to sing anymore. Thanks again.
And good night!